Hey, so this next unit is a lot bigger than the previous two units. We're going to be looking at aggregate demand and aggregate supply. We're first going to focus on aggregate demand, but we're going to look at some things that influence, and that happens to be disposable income is a big thing. How much of our income do we have left to spend? So that's that personal income. We talked about wages last unit, and then minus our personal taxes is what we have left to spend. So we have two choices with our income. We can either spend our money or we can save our money. For most citizens, we spend most of our percentage is spent, and that could be on our rent or mortgage, food, car, insurance, clothing, you name it. So those are our two choices with money. And then our next thing is that consumption schedule. It shows the amount households plan to spend for consumer goods at different levels of disposable income. And so disposable income would be on the x-axis, consumption, which is kind of the amount you spend, the price for things, I guess. And if you think of income, it's kind of quantity of money that you have coming in. So it's upward sloping as well. The next thing we want to talk about is the savings schedule, and that shows the amount households plan to save at different levels of income. It's also upward sloping with income on the horizontal axis and savings where price would be, but savings is the money you hold on to. And then, and then the next thing we want to talk about is what determines whether you save money or use it. So one of the determinants for savings is your wealth. So if your wealth goes up, people tend to spend more and save less. Right now, people's wealth is going down. The stock market's low, people are losing jobs, so household wealth is going down. So right now, people are spending less and they're trying to save more. They're trying to put it away. What if this pandemic lasts longer? I may need that money. So right now, wealth is going down. People are spending less and trying to save more for a rainy day. The next thing that's going to cause that entire consumption and saving schedules to both shift is expectations. So if we think prices are going to go up in the future, people buy more now and they save less because they're like, well, things are going to be more expensive, so I'm going to hold on to it. Not sure what expectations are right now. Price of gas is really low. And people are probably waiting to see what the housing market does, because if this continues, they'll expect the prices of houses to go down. So I would anticipate a lot of people are waiting to see what happens in the future. So they are probably spending less and holding on to that money because maybe they hope to spend it later. The real interest rate, which is adjusted for inflation, it causes, if it goes down, the real interest rate, households consume more and they borrow more and they save less. That's because they're like, wow, this house is less money or this car is less money, so I'm going to buy a car now. So that's the interest rate. And then the other one is kind of bizarre. It looks like my notes are off, but household debt. So increasing debt increases consumption, but if debt gets too high, it'll lower consumption because households have to spend more money to pay off loans. So what that's really saying is, if you think you're going to have, if you have a little debt, you're kind of like, well, you know, what's a little more debt? It's not too big of a deal. So I have $100 in debt. What's another 100? It's just 200. But if it gets too high, then you're going to have to stop spending and pay it off. So paying off that debt, or I should say savings, is considered a leakage to the economy. It doesn't go towards anything. This counts towards GDP when you spend it. So, by the way, I should have mentioned this. Aggregate demand is going to be GDP. So real GDP is going to be consumption by consumers. It's going to be investment spending, gross investment spending by businesses. It's going to be government spending, and then it's also going to be net export. So that's how we determine aggregate demand. Taxation, if taxes go up, that reduces your consumption and savings. So, because you can't, because it's going to the government. And then the next thing we want to talk about is expected rate of return. Right now we're focusing on investment spending, I sub G. So we just focused on consumption, consumers, the C part of GDP. Now we're looking at investment spending. And so now we're thinking of businesses. If the marginal benefit to invest for business, if they think they can profit from a purchase, they're going to make the decision to buy things. That real interest rate is the price they're going to pay to borrow money, and it's the marginal cost of investment for a business, meaning the difference in cost. So when you look at it, if the expected rate of return, say a business expects, well, I'm going to invest $100,000 and I think I'm going to make 10% off that investment, and the interest rate is only 5%, my expected rate of return is going to be 5%. 10% minus 5 would be my expected rate of return. Then the business is going to be like, oh, I'm going to make 5% off this 100,000, so therefore they would invest in it. So the investment demand curve shows the inverse relationship, and it's between the real rate of interest and the level of spending for capital goods. And that real interest rate is what they're spending on it. So, so what's going to shift that entire investment demand curve, that's gross investment, that's that part of GDP, is basically acquisition, maintenance, operating costs. So if my costs go up, my investment goes down. So if it costs more to buy, I don't know, a business that needs to buy trucks, if that goes up, then they're going to invest less. So anything that costs to operate a business, depending upon what it is. Business taxes, if my taxes go up, it lowers my profits and it shifts the curve to the left. Kind of similar to what we saw in microeconomics. Technological changes typically advances lower production costs. That's what we've seen, and therefore investment demand shifts to the right, so it increases. And then stock of capital goods is changing right now. But if the economy is overstocked, high inventories exist, the expected rate of return on new investment goes down because, like, well, we've already got so much, there's no reason to add more. And then I think I need to move my screen down, sorry. But the last one on your notes, if you look at it, is number 5 would be expectations of future business conditions. Right now, I would say that businesses, there it is, are concerned about the future, and I'd be very surprised if a lot of businesses are saying, hey, it's a great market to expand in. My guess is they're not doing that. And then our last slide is the multiplier effect, and that's that ripple through that we're seeing right now. So it's 1 over the marginal propensity to save, or you could take 1 minus the MPC, since we have 2 choices with our money. But it shows you the greater impact on initial change. And we'll talk more about that down the road as well.